And welcome back, Rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is our USA men's and England's men's match review of the last weekend's clash in Washington, D.C. at a sold-out Audi Field, where number 5 England proved why they are the 5th best team in the world, taking down the United States 40-5. Well, we'll talk a lot about this game. And first of all, I want to thank everybody that joined us in the watch along. It was a lot of fun. Again, the whole point of the watch along is really all about just enjoying the game of rugby that we all enjoy. We actually had quite a few hecklers in there, especially English fans, and I get it. It's definitely a game where, especially when it comes to England, United States is not on the level at all, and this score line really explains that. But again, it's just a fun game, and there was a lot of camaraderie from a lot of people, and even English fans. There's a lot of English fans that really gave a lot of support to our USA boys. It was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do it again. We'll try to do one for one of the USA women's game. It just seems for whatever reason their schedule is a lot more earlier in the day, as well as not when I'm not working. The USA men's games tend to be a little bit more aligned with my schedule, but we'll see. There are a lot of games coming up, especially the Women's Rugby World Cup coming up in just a couple, in about a month's time. And of course, we have the all-important Pacific Nations Cup with the USA men's, with Rugby World Cup qualifications on the line. But let's talk about this game. So yes, 40-5. We were hoping in this match that it would be a respectable score. In my preview of the game, I was hoping that we'd lose no more than 21 points. Yeah, that didn't happen. The first half. First of all, we do have to talk about the unfortunate weather delay. Now, granted, that affects both sides. But it is the second game in a row that the USA unfortunately has been hampered with a weather delay. About an hour it was for us once the game kicked off. Unfortunately, right off the bat, United States got a yellow card for Chris Hislenbeck with an intentional knockdown. And within that 10 minutes in the sin bin, England was able to score 2 tries right off the bat. First try by Curtis Langdon, conversion, of course, by George Ford, and then Luke Northmore with his try conversion there. The Curtis Langdon try was pretty much a maul and score. The Northmore try... So, one of the issues with the USA Eagles team, I feel, especially with the last 2 games, Spain and this one, there is a lot of mental errors, and I feel the inexperience. This is a very young team. That seems to be the biggest underline of this USA Eagles team, and it's something I feel is by design. Head coach Scott Lawrence is purposely focusing on the future Rugby World Cups, not only the one in 27, but the one, of course, in 31 that is being hosted here in the United States. As I've mentioned before in the watch along in some other videos, you look at the USA women's team, the one that just recently had a really good win against Fiji. If you look at that lineup, all 23 players, the majority of those players have a vast amount of test match experience. And that is something that has been built up over the years. It just doesn't happen overnight. That's the same thing with this team. I feel Scott Lawrence is purposely creating a core team of players that are going to grow together over the span of the next 6 years. So by the time, not necessarily the focus is the 27. Obviously, it'd be great, first of all, to qualify for the 27 World Cup. But then the showcase isn't the 27 one. It is actually the 31 one where we are going to be hosting, because that's where everything really does matter. We talked about this during the watch along. the growth of rugby really will depend on the success of the USA team with the Rugby World Cup in the United States. We saw it with the World Cup with soccer. USA, us American fans, I hate to say it, but it's the truth. We are very fickle fans. We support winners. We love winners. If we don't do well in that World Cup, I don't feel rugby has much of a chance. So everything relies so much on that. And so we're hoping that by the time we get to that 31 World Cup, the team will be a very experienced, very grizzled, very united team. That is 6 years down the line. So we are building a team from the ground up. And unfortunately, there are a lot of mental errors in this game. I hate to pick on him, but Tom Pittman, a guy that has had a lot of fanfare around him because he's never played a game in the United States, yet he was scouted because of his grandfather's heritage, Irish national player, born in Maryland. They decided they wanted to bring him into the squad. This is only his second game. If you watch the game, I think he just didn't realize how fast rugby players are. Pro rugby players, nationally capped rugby players. A ball was kicked by the wonderfully talented George Ford. I mean, the centennial man for England showed why he was the team captain on the squad and why he's one of the most talented players in the world. His kicking prowess, he put the ball right down, and for whatever reason, Tom Pittman didn't realize that he should have kept his head up, but Emmanuel Fea-Waboso was right on him, and unfortunately, because the ball was pretty much in the USA try zone, I mean, it ended up becoming a 5-meter scrum, and, just like that, England's able to score. So, the first 2 tries, I feel, were a lot to do with just mental mistakes. Now, the scoreline could have been a lot worse. It ended up being only 19-0 by the half. Caden Murley, who scored in the Argentinian game with England, was able to score again here. George Ford missed that conversion. But this scoreline could have been a lot worse. There were 2 tries that were taken off of the board because of penalties, one from obstruction. I forgot what the other one was. I think the other one was a knock-on. And, this game could have been a lot worse for the United States. Now, with that being said, there was also a weather delay during the middle of the first half. So just, again, not making excuses for it, but there was a little bit of clunkiness with the game, a lot of handling errors on the part of both sides. England, again, could have been a lot worse, but there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds with the ball handling errors. So this scoreline could have been a lot further, but 19-0 by the half. Right at the start of the second half, unfortunately, Jack Van Poortvliet was able to score right away. And I was hoping, because if you watch the Spain game started the same way as this English game. There was a couple of tries that were scored by Spain that I feel just took USA by surprise. They just were not ready for it. But then by the second half, the United States just started firing back and actually got within 1 point of Spain. If you took away the 2 weird tries in the beginning of the Spain game, that game could have been all USA. Similar to this one. I was hoping that there would be a second half turnaround. Unfortunately, there was not. If anything, USA, after the second half of the second half, just looked completely spent, just looked completely tired, and England just looked like they were ready to go another 80 minutes on the pitch. 2 more tries scored, one by Harry Randall, the backup scrum half. George Ford, of course, converts that. And then Gabriel Osha, who actually had a really great game here, scored in the 74th minute. Charlie Atkinson, the backup fly half, makes the conversion there. Fortunately for the United States, it could have been a really horrible game with no score, but literally at the very last second, Shiloh Klein was able to score at the 83rd minute. Misconversion by Tom Pittman, so the score ended up being 40-5. But honestly, despite this, it wasn't a great showing. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but there was a lot of positivity there as well. I want to bring out 3 players in particular that looked really, really phenomenal in the game. First of all, Tavita Nagali. The guy, from Old Glory. This is only his third Test cap, but in the second half, he was like a one-man lineout machine. He was deflecting lineouts. He was doing a lot of turnovers. He was looking phenomenal on the pitch, especially during set piece play. And that's something I also want to talk about. The set piece plays, unfortunately for Team USA, in the last two games, especially with Spain, this one reared its ugly head. Lineouts were really, really off. Our scrum was really bad. Just a lot of those things really need to be worked on. And again, it's a young team. Those are things that will eventually be worked on, but it's really going to be something to watch out for, especially with the Pacific Nation Cup. I'm going to be curious to see what the makeup of the team is. It should be mentioned that two of the most experienced players in the squad during the Spain game were not in this game against England. Of course, I'm talking about a man who just had his 50th cap, Nate the Great Augsburger, and then AJ McGinty, the most experienced and currently the most capped USA Eagles player that is currently playing for the USA Eagles. Both of them were scratched out of the lineup. Don't know if it was injuries or what, but losing those two players of such significant experience, it really hurt USA. I'm not saying that would have made a difference where maybe USA would have won, but I think the scoreline would have been a lot different. It will be interesting to see if maybe head coach Scott Lawrence looks into the reserves, the traveling reserve players. Maybe we might see a Luke Carty step up for AJ McGinty. I know Christian Dyer of RFCLA, who is a very talented and experienced winger. He's been suffering with some injuries over this prior MLR season. Maybe he might be able to step up to replace Nate Augsburger. But it's going to be interesting to see if we have about a month's time until the next game for USA. It'll be interesting to see if we have to call up some players to replace some already injured players on the USA Eagles side. Two other players I do want to mention before we wrap up here. Inafudi, a dynamic player. The last try that was scored by Shallow Klein was because of Inafudi. Once he came onto the pitch, it really felt like the tempo changed for USA. Unfortunately, by that point, we were already like 38 down, 32 down or so, 33 down or so, and it really didn't make too much of a difference. But man, he looked dynamic, and he at least, like I said, set up for the try for Shallow Klein so that USA was able to get on the scoreboard. And then a guy that I've always been a fan of, Christian Prince Poidevin. He just got, depending on how you look at it, he either just got his cap in this game or he got his cap in the prior game, but a very young, very talented player, and he looked phenomenal on the pitch once he came off of the bench. He was just making all the big plays. There was an interview with George Ford after the game, along with him and head coach Borthwick, where George Ford was mentioning that the USA has a lot of potential, especially with how physical they play. You could feel every hit by the players, and I'm pretty sure a couple of them were specifically from Christian Poidevin. So, again, it's a young team. There's a lot that we have to work on. It's going to be interesting to see now that the focus is going to be shifting to Rugby World Cup qualifications, which is all about the Pacific Nation Series. The 6 teams are playing in that. You just cannot be the last place team because the top 5, Fiji and Japan have already qualified, so the next 3 teams are in. That's out of 4 possible teams, so we just cannot be the last one. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. So like I said, we have until August 22nd. That's the next game for USA, taking on Canada, our bitter rivals in the north, who just recently had a heartbreaker of a loss against Spain. Also, they had a tough loss against Belgium. It's not necessarily an easy game for either side, but it's going to be a very, very important game to go forward with the qualification process for the Rugby World Cup. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what the lineup will be. It'll be interesting to see what AJ McGinty, Nate Augsburger's status are. Do we go for some of the more experienced players that are on the reserve list? Will they be ready to step up? And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, again, I wish the score was a little bit closer, but it was a fun game to watch. I wish there wasn't a rain delay, but it was a fun game to watch, and that's the great thing about rugby. It's too early to say that there's anything to worry about. I do feel definitely there's going to be a lot of pressure on head coach Scott Lawrence on the Pacific Nation Series and of course the qualification. But I understand the process that head coach Scott Lawrence is going through, and I know it's going to be a lot to ask for because you can go on the social media and you can definitely read the comments by some very diehard USA rugby pundits. But I feel you have to trust the process, and I feel that this is the way to build a team. Not necessarily for 27, of course. Qualifying for 27 is step one, but I feel it's really about preparing for the 31 Rugby World Cup and making sure we have a very strong, cohesive team by that point. 6 years in the making. Of course, that starts now, but as most rugby nations, first tier nations will tell you, it's unfortunately not something that just happens overnight. So hopefully we'll get there. But again, thank you very much for checking out my video. Thank you very much if you're one of the many people that checked along with the watch along. It was a lot of fun. I'll let you know when we'll do the next one. I maybe it would be the Canada game, maybe the Japan game. We'll see. It's a lot of fun rugby that is up for grabs to watch, and so as always, I'll be there. I hope you will be there with me. Thank you very much for checking out the video, and I'll see you on the pitch.